Hello, everybody. And shut off all the speakers and all that other noise so we don't have any interruptions. Hi, I'm John Self. Welcome to Career Live. It's been an eventful morning. We had a lot of storms yesterday. And so we had a lot of some technology issues this morning on a coaching call. One of the few times I couldn't make connections. So if something happens and we drop off, then we hadn't had rain in 40 days or something, and then yesterday had over an inch and some thunderstorms. And so we normally have a very, very reliable internet connection. I have a lot of download speed, but unfortunately the rain may have gotten in and messed up with the circuits. I'm not sure how it all works, but when it doesn't work, it's frustrating. So I want to share something with you that we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday. We're going to talk today about interviewing, and it's a subject we revisit. And sometimes in coaching, you talk about something a lot and you think, okay, I don't need to talk about this. Everybody's got that. But the truth is that's my inexperience, I guess, when talking about online and video. So basically what I would say is that you have to understand that that interviewing is now a zero-sum game, and it's highly, highly, highly competitive. So you have to go all in on charting a new bold course. You have to absolutely invest time and effort and maybe some money on understanding how to be more effective in the interview chair. And you really have to spend a lot of time practicing. And so today we're going to go back and cover some things we've maybe talked about before. But this is a mini coaching session, so I want to get started and share with you some of my thoughts on this. First of all, our agenda, we're going to talk about the importance of preparation. Then we're going to talk about the advantage of a solid start. We're going to talk a little bit about the STAR concept, something I did not really like initially. Then we're going to show how to marry that with core and categorical, a system we've been using. And then we'll talk about best ways to answer that ubiquitous first question: tell me about yourself. So interview preparation is absolutely critical, and it boosts confidence and self-awareness. Now, you have to in order to really prepare, you just don't read the job summary. You learn it. Secondly, you do sort of external research. If you know somebody who works in a market where this organization is located, then you really want to reach out to people. What do you know about the organization? What's their story? You want to Google them. Look for any news stories that may give you insight into how they're doing, challenges, conflicts, market competition, etc. So you really want to do some additional research. You want to be careful how you use that information, but just knowing it, you might be able to drop in a couple of things that will absolutely help you establish credibility and connection with the job interviewer, because that's so important. So review the job summary, learn it. Okay, learn it. Research the employer, talk to people, do your online research. And then as you look at the job summary, you may be able to, some of them are so pathetic. I'm sorry for that, but they don't tell you much of anything. And that really puts you at a disadvantage. But there is hope, because there are only so many different interview questions that can be asked. And so if you can pick out some things that you're seeing on the job summary, if they talk about ability to solve problems or whatever, or they may reference a specific issue, you have to have a lot of experience in these areas. This will allow you to prepare for the interview, because you're going to know that's an issue. And the best way to answer those questions is have a disciplined format. Now, one of the things I will tell you about career management, which is more than just job search, but one of the things I'll tell you about career management is that people usually look at the job search, the job interview, as important, but they're not very intentional about it. They kind of read through some things and then they come in and just answer questions. Today, in this hyper competitive market, you've got to come in and sell your value. In order to do that, you have to connect your skills with their needs. And so it helps you be able to do as much research as you possibly can and ask a lot of questions. Before we get started, are there any areas that you believe that this position needs to really be able to address? And take that information and use it. And so STAR, basically, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a really good interview answer format. Then we now are trying to blend those two together. We were big believers in core and categorical. I started using behavior and values interviewing in 1994. Read a book called Top Grading by Brad Smart, who did an incredible job helping Jack Welch build his leadership team, which was phenomenal. And Welch always complained that the people they hired weren't as good as the people Brad Smart recommended for hiring, and so they adopted his system called Top Grading, and it's basically a very in-depth, very lengthy core and categorical form, and it takes really hours. So we broke it down into three parts in our searches when I did that for 27 years. But core and categorical really refers to behavior and values, and then each job is broken down by categories. And categorical, you'll have more metric questions. Core are more behavior and values questions. And so I think these are the kind of major endpoints or issues that you want to want to consider and use this information to really organize your thoughts. So the importance of a fast start. I can't overemphasize this enough. It's important to establish connection that you can develop. But if you're struggling to connect with the interviewer because you didn't do a good job on the first question or the first two or three questions, then you're behind the curve and you may never get out from behind it. So it's so important to get off to a fast start. And you really need to have that first question nailed. And you all know what that is. And we're going to talk about that as we close today. Interviewing is the most unique, challenging form of business communication. It really is. It's not like a speech. It's not like a presentation, a keynote, or on the main stage. It's not even like talking to in a staff meeting. No, this is where you are being asked questions and you have to use those questions as an avenue to sell your value. You have to use those questions as a way to connect your skills with their needs or with their culture, with their values in a meaningful, memorable way. And I say memorable because if you're one of 5 finalists that are invited to an in-depth interview on site, you've got to distinguish yourself from everybody else. If you are like everybody else, you will probably not get picked because somebody else is going to merge from the pack. If you have 5 candidates, okay, you have 5 candidates and they all have really good education, maybe 1 or 2 are even Ivy League. You know who's going to get the job? It's not necessarily the Ivy League guys. No, those cats, they got great education. It cost them an arm and a leg. You know who's going to get the job? It's the person who's qualified, but it's the person who does the best job communicating their value and in a meaningful way that can show I've done this, and here's how I would approach this problem. Here's how I've added more cash to the bottom line. Here's how I've reduced poor or lagging employee engagement or employee turnover. You always want to have before and after examples whenever you can, part of your metrics. But it's so important that you be able to harness this kind of really gangly form of interviewing. And the problem a lot of people have is they're only going to do maybe 50 interviews in their lifetime. That's not a lot. Okay, there's things you make presentations and meetings virtually every day, but interviewing is different, and you don't do it that often, and so that's why so many people struggle. I hear so many people in coaching sessions say, "I'm really good at the interview," and you know what? If they know that person, they probably really are. However, if you're dealing with people you don't know, that's a horse of a different color. And what my experience has shown over 27 years is that a lot of people are really average. A few people are really good and fewer still are great. And I've interviewed, that's based on 9,000 plus interviews over, gosh, a lot of years. I was doing interviewing even before I had my own search firm. So I was interviewing people in various sets. When I was at Lifelight, I interviewed pilots and flight nurses to be sure that my clients were getting the right people, and that the pilots we were hiring to work for our clients had the right mindset about working in healthcare. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've recruited physicians into small communities. I've recruited turnaround teams into wall-to-wall union complex hospitals. So I've really done a lot of interviewing, and I will tell you, I really stand by that statement. Most people are average, a few people are good, and very few are great. Now, you're not born with the ability to be a good interview. Okay, this is so unique. This is not a skill that you're born with. You may be fast on your feet. You may be comfortable in the extemporaneous format. And somebody once said that's what interviewing is. It's 75 questions in an extemporaneous speaking contest. Um, you may have that skill, but you don't ordinarily have to sell yourself. Okay. People, it's okay to sell a car from a big manufacturing company or a management services agreement from a well known established service provider, or to sell a suit that's in Neiman Marcus in Dallas that's high quality. When you're behind the name and you have that brand, that big company behind you, that gives you a lot of confidence. But when you're selling yourself, that's when people mutter, stutter, fumble, and mumble into the end zone. And you have to get used to selling yourself. It's not bad, but there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And that's what we teach people in our interviewing course. Now, when we talk about the fast start again, if you get off to a fast start and they say, tell us about yourself, they do not want to hear a rambling 15 or 20-minute review of your career. No, they want to know who you are, and you need to give them information right off the bat that will connect, that will help you build. You want to set the tone for building trust and likability. And when you really do well with, if you come in and you know that you've got 10 or 15 answers down pat, what do you feel? You feel confidence. And when you're confident, you have more self-awareness. And self-awareness is extremely important, because if you're so focused on answering the question and you haven't really thought about questions you might answer, your brain's going 90,000 miles an hour. Your right brain's arguing with your left brain, left side of your brain. There's just a lot going on. But if you know you're ready and you're ready, you now are able to pay attention to how people are responding to your answers. You can watch their eyes. You can watch their body language. You watch other people in the room if it's a panel interview. Self-awareness is so incredibly important. If you feel like you're rambling, you can usually tell by the face or some of the reactions for the people in the room. So you need to be self-aware. That's absolutely critical to be successful in a job interview. Again, these things are not nice to have. In this market, they're essential to have. Okay, so now let's talk about the star. This is not really complex. Okay, when people say, "Oh, the star," I mean, what is that? They settle in for a real long, complicated answer. It's not. Now, it's not easy to train yourself to use this format, especially when most people in a job interview are kind of freelancing and kind of the answers coming to their mind as they sort of speak. This is about understanding what is the situation that you were dealing with. Okay, it may be we needed to do a better job and be more efficient. It may have been we need to reduce our turnover rate, or we've got a lot of employees that don't seem to be engaged. What can we do to improve engagement? So that then you talk about the task, and that's basically understanding the tactics. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to organize this process? And then you have to take action. And that action, hopefully, will produce results. And so that's how you organize your answers. You organize them around those 4 categories. And if you do that, you can apply just about everything you want to talk about. Every question you get, you can, unless it's some behavioral values, tell us about a time. And there's still opportunity to use that. But if you get that template burned into your mindset, that helps you be very focused and avoid rambling answers. And believe me, early in my career, My dad used to say this kid could chat up a brick wall, and so I ramble too much because one of my great strengths is communication. I'm really good at extemporaneous speaking on a stage with a lot of people, but sometimes I didn't know when to shut up. I didn't know when the answer I'd given was good enough, and you really, that's why preparation is so important. That's why being prepared is so important because you have confidence, you're self aware. And if you have the discipline of STAR, that makes it even better. So you need every advantage you can get. Now let's talk about core and categorical. Now, this is again another template for questions. Core, you're going to get a lot of your core questions or behavior and values. Tell us about a time. Tell us about how, a key moment in your career. Tell us about a time when you really flubbed up. What happened? you know and you have to be prepared for all those questions. Now, I know some people that don't want to talk about negative stuff, and they don't want to talk about any failures because they don't want to talk about it. Their ego won't let them. Well, let me tell you what recruiters do. They're going to ask some of those questions because they want to see how you're going to respond. Okay, you cannot afford to get to even subtly kind of kind of resistant, or feel like you're not, you get really insecure. You can't afford that, not even for a second. So one of the things you need to do is you have to understand how the jobs are organized and how you can use that organization to help you come up with great answers. Every job is going to have somewhere between 4 to 6 categories. And just as an example, you have HR, human resources. You've got employees that work for you. You have governance. Those are either you're a CEO reporting to a board, or you're reporting up the chain of command. The people above you are part of the governance structure for you. You have HR, you have marketing. Excuse me, marketing may be the way you provide services and deliver satisfaction to other departments in the hospital. For example, if you're pharmacy, or if you're public relations and you have people asking you to do projects for them, that's your marketing component. That's your customer service. That's your sales component. Okay, and then there's the finance. You got a department. You have a budget. How well do you manage your resources? Are you a good steward of those? Those are some basic categories. And what you want to do is take every category that you've identified and break it down. What are your strengths? What strengths do you have? Your 4 or 5 signature strengths. What strengths in this category do you want to talk about? What strengths in HR, the HR component, do you want to talk about? If you've consistently reduced turnover, that would be a strength that you'd want to bring up. And you probably will need to have a couple of stories, or at least one story that would really help that information stick in the mind of the interviewer. Let me repeat something that I have said many, many times before. Interviewers don't remember all the facts and figures they hear in a job interview, even if they're taking copious notes. Now, I interview a little bit differently. I was a former investigative reporter, crime writer, so I'm used to taking notes. That's a way that I kind of remember things, and it's a good thing for me to go back. Even though I had some videos, pieces of the interview were videotaped, I wanted a really good record for myself. So when I was writing the candidate assessment form and the candidate analysis, that I could give the client information that had some depth and breadth in it, and they could use it to make a decision. So I was a note taker. Some people aren't. They just sit there and look at the candidate, nod, and I'm not sure how people remember all that information, but I was a note taker. Some people are. Just because they're taking notes and looking down, that doesn't mean they're not interested. Okay, but if you try to give them a bunch of data, unless they're big time note takers, they're not going to remember it. They remember those things that you've wrapped a story around. And that's why it's so important to have the STAR to give you the discipline of what elements of the project you want to cover, what elements of the answer, how do you structure that so that it stays concise and you're succinct. And then you want to have a story that you wrap it all around. And that's where core and categorical comes through. Every category, strengths, okay? And you also, in every category, list your weaknesses. Why? Because you want to be able to think about that. Because if they ask for weaknesses and you hadn't thought about it, you're going to fumble, mumble, and stumble. So what you want to do on a weakness question is say, this was something in my career that it was identified for me. and I got the help of a coach, or I really became so aware that I was able to really check myself, and I've improved this. You want to talk about the situation briefly, but then you want to pivot quickly to what you've done to mitigate that issue, how you've grown professionally, how you've grown personally. So you can take a negative question and give a very, very positive answer. And in our interview course, that's some of the things that we teach you to do. Now, when I say the interview course, we have two. One is online with lectures that we gave for years and years and years. It's just solid, solid stuff. And if you're a member in our subscriber program, or if you're one of our package clients, you have access. In addition to all the live coaching you get, you have access to that information as a supplement and a reinforcement tool. We are also getting ready to launch an in-depth, ongoing, one-on-one coaching boot camp, for lack of a better expression. And that's where every week you have some homework to do. We are going to focus on an element of the interviewing process. We're going to have real life scenarios that you can provide or we'll develop for you. And we're going to go through we're going to probably go through 6 or 7 mock interviews. You get a recording of all this. We tell you, okay, here's how you can flip that answer and do a better job answering it. That's something I'm really, really good at. I don't know where it came from. I had a client once that said, John, I have one question. I said, okay, what's that? And he said, where does all of this, he used stuff, come from? And I said, that's just one of my gifts. I'm not overwhelmed with gifts, but that's one of them. And so we use that in our interview course to help people understand how they can take questions and make them more powerful with purpose, okay, and more intentional. Okay, that's something we're working on. Look for that to be posted on our site at johngself.com, and click that little red button on the right side so you can get into the course pages. So you want to connect your stories with strengths in each category. There's always you can't be in business for any time at all and not have a big kind of screw up. Okay. So one of the things that I would tell you is that you got to be prepared to answer those oh crap questions. Don't worry, it probably won't come up. But if you go into that interview and you know I got an answer for something that might come up, you got fired, you got your name in the newspaper, whatever, you want to say, yes, this is what happened. Now let me tell you the follow-up story, the rest of the story, or let me tell you lessons learned. Smile when you're saying this. Reassure them that you know what happened and that you've grown from that issue, because that demonstrates your emotional intelligence. And a lot of recruiters really probe that issue. So if you're not ready for that oh crap question, then you're not going to answer it correctly. You're not going to give a really good, compelling answer. And if you're not careful, if you're really not careful, if this was something that just recently happened to you, you can allow yourself to get negative really, really fast. So you want to be prepared, and you want to be able to address all those elements in the core and categorical form. And we have that. It's available on our website. You can download it for free. And then if you ever have any questions about things you download and you want to spend a few minutes with me, I'm happy to give you some of my time. You go to our website, johngself.com, and go to the bottom of the page, and there's a little icon that's cleverly named Talk to John. Click that, and you get access to me for 30 minutes, either on the phone or in a Zoom interview. Anytime you talk to me and need advice, we have a recording device and note-taking AI, and we'll send you a record of that, okay? Just even if it's a courtesy call. So I encourage you to, if you have questions, listen, the dumb questions are the ones you don't ask. And you cannot afford, it's so bloody hard if you get past the computers with a resume. And then you have to get past numerous other interviews. Okay. They may even ask you to do some projects or a sample project so they can see your work product and the quality of it. But then when you finally get to the interview, you can't afford to show up and not be superbly prepared. And we'll walk you through steps of how to get prepared for a job interview in our boot camp. So in the end, you want to integrate your stories, your values in with the STAR format so that you get a succinct answer. Now, let's talk about that ubiquitous first question in the few minutes we have left. Let me tell you, unless they ask you to walk through your resume, don't do that. Okay. I've had applicants that take 20 to 30 minutes of talking about their career without even barely a comma or a period or a breath of fresh air. I mean, I don't know how they did it. But recruiters, unless we say this is what we want you to do, and then there's usually a reason for it. Maybe you have a gap in your interview. We want to see how you're going to handle that. So don't answer it with a rambling answer. Don't start rambling through your career or your academics or whatever. Tell them about who you are. Come up with a really good 250 or 300 word statement. We call it your value brand statement. And it's a combination of all your 4 to 5 signature strengths. I think we have that form available for download for free. So, do that. If you want to talk to me about it, I'll be happy to give you a quick run through. This is not complicated stuff. Now, it's not easy because you really have to think deeply about who you are. But when you're talking about, when they say, tell me about yourself, this is a question that you already have prepared. You've already rehearsed it 7 ways from Sunday. You would also have to understand, and this is really important, that in interviews, there's a certain performative art. Okay. Now, if any of you are Protestants and you go to church on a regular basis, at the end of the service in a lot of churches, they have what they call it's called an altar call. In other words, they're inviting people to devote their lives and energies and beliefs to God and to Jesus or whatever church you go to, and you go down and you make that commitment in front of the other church members. They call it the altar call. In the evangelical church, it's called devoting your life to Christ or giving your life to Christ. So to get people to do that, to respond toward the end of a sermon, if you go back and think about all the sermons you've sat through in your life, the pastor or the priest will start slowing down, and he'll start making really great points that touch your emotions. If any of you remember the great evangelist, the late Billy Graham, he could fill up a coliseum with 10,000 people. They would be, it might take 10 or 15 minutes for them to come down to the front of the auditorium where he had his platform and where he had his pulpit, and behind him was a big choir, and they would start singing this very emotional music very softly as he wound up his sermon. It was called Just As I Am, and it touched people's emotions. Okay, they'd been absorbing the knowledge. They were really developing a likability for this guy, and they developed trust for this guy because he was making it approachable. Okay, and so when he made the call, the music and his performative art triggered that emotion, and they got up. And it may take them 20 minutes to get down to the stage, but they got up. Okay, now let's bring this back to interviewing, because we're not doing altar calls in interviewing, but I use that as an example. When you're to make a point, sometimes you want to slow down. Like if they asked me once, what was the most meaningful point, and what was the most meaningful event in your career that changed your life? That's a perfect question to use that emotion. And I basically related the story of when I found out as a recent investigative reporter, I had become the director of PR at a hospital in Houston called Herman Hospital. And they were starting an aircraft ambulance program, a helicopter ambulance program. And I was walking down the hall, and I saw my boss engaged in a heated conversation. They were using words I had never heard even in the newsroom at the police station. And it was going back and forth. And fortunately, there was no patients or patients' families in the hallway. And the doctor yelled, "You're going to do that blankety blank helicopter program, and you've got nobody to run it." And my boss, who was a great man, the late Bill Smith, who really turned Herman around, looked up and caught my eye, and he said, "John Self's going to do it, and he'll sink with it or swim with it." That 12 to 14 seconds absolutely changed my entire life. Okay? That I would argue is an answer that everybody will remember. Why? Because I slowed down, I dropped my voice down a little bit, and I really tried to connect with him and punch an emotional button. Now, people say, "Gosh, that's so manipulative, and this is professional interviewing." No, you got 5 other people you're competing against. You can throw the kitchen sink out there, but if you get prepared, if you know how to use these tools, you can be the one successful. If you're happy about losing, okay, then fine. But you keep in mind, don't kid yourself. When you don't get picked, you lost. And why did you lose? Because somebody else did a better job than you did. So get off your bench and learn how to be the best you can be. Okay? That's something you're responsible for. That's on you. We can help you get there. We take mediocre people and make them into good interviewers. Will they always get every job they want? Absolutely not, because it's such an inexact science. I can't guarantee how you're going to respond. I can give you the tools and I can help coach you, and we will spend a lot of time with you. I mean, an hour at least every week, and you'll have homework, and we'll have a lot of practice sessions. You'll have a lot of video you can go back and look at. So watch for that. It's probably going to be out in the on the page, hopefully midweek next week, maybe before, but we've got some fine tuning to do. Okay, so that's that. I enjoy doing these things. I hope it's helpful. Please give me your. I pulled off the chat, but please give me your feelings about the information we're presenting and what I could do to meet your needs more effectively. What I could say, what subjects I could cover to help you build a stronger career. I want you to know I appreciate you being here today on a Friday. It's coming up on 11:31, so it's time for me to say goodbye, to wish you a happy weekend. And if you're in Texas, it's actually cool. Very rarely in Texas do you have Halloween and not have to wear short sleeve shirts. And yesterday it was a gusty wind and it was in the 60s last night. My wife left the windows open in my studio at our home, and I came in this morning. It was wall to wall paper because we face the north. Thanks again. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for Lunch and Learn. If you're a member of our organization, you will get a notice on that. We'll also be posting on our various platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next week. Okay, I've got to be more prepared.